thank you. Hello. It's been a little minute since I've recorded one of these, so it's very exciting to be back. And I've been learning some sort of light editing techniques in the interim, so hopefully you might see a little bit of an improvement in terms of quality, fewer ums and ers and long gaps. Not quite sure how to edit out wind, so apologies for that. I'm going to try and walk in such a way that my back is covering the microphone. But I wanted to come on and say Happy New Year to all my subscribers and listeners. I very much appreciate you all being here and all your lovely comments and likes. I had a bit of a burst of new followers, new subscribers just before Christmas. I'm not actually quite sure how. This way, guys. But I suspect I might have been shared by someone else's publication. So I had about 150 new subscribers over the course of a week or two. So if you're listening to this and you think, yes, I write a very successful publication and I shared you, thank you very much. I appear to not have the technical know-how to work out where these people came from. So I'm sorry for not sort of thanking you directly, but yes, very much appreciate the shout out. You might be able to hear in the background the bird song and the panting dog and the muddy footprints. I'm at the park with Rosie and Badger, and it is actually a really beautiful winter day. It's cold and clear, crisp, sunny. It's nice to see the sun actually. Feels like I haven't seen sort of bright sunshine in quite a long time. We've had a lot of snow up here in Inverness, which has been amazing, like don't get me wrong, magical wonderland and all that, and it's made walking to work really fun until the last couple of days where it sort of went through a bit of a sort of thaw-freeze cycle, so it would thaw a little bit during the day, and then it would freeze again overnight, so it just got progressively more and more dangerous. And actually the last day I walked to work before it all disappeared, I couldn't really walk on any of the pavements because it was just literally like an ice rink. So I ended up having to walk on the road, which obviously 7:30 in the morning when it's dark is not ideal. So yeah, I'm not going to lie, I did breathe a bit of a sigh of relief when it all finally vanished and I can go back to running and walking and whatnot without fear of falling over. There's the wind again. So yeah, I thought I'd pop on here and just have a little brief chat about my goals for the blog and the podcast over the coming months. I'm not setting goals for the whole year this year. I always find that by the time I get to the end of the year, they're just not really relevant to me anymore. My life appears to change enough over the course of 12 months that goals I make in January aren't always that relevant come December. So instead, I'm sort of following a little bit of the 12-week year, which is a book, I can't remember who it's by, but I'll link it in the show notes, about goal setting over essentially a 12-week period. It's very corporate, I would say. It's clearly written for sort of corporate America. But the actual gist is, I think, quite sensible, which is basically break your year up into 12-week blocks and set yourself goals in that 12 weeks that are then easier to achieve, and you get the momentum of having hopefully achieved things faster than if you're trying to achieve things over 12 months where it's easy to lose momentum or your life to change to the point where those goals just don't seem relevant anymore. So, dog's disappeared off into the hedgerow. Yeah, so that's my plan. So I'm going to set goals over the next 12 weeks, basically between now and sort of roughly the end of March. And one of them is potentially, and this depends on the number of subscribers I have by the end of March, potentially to turn on paid subscriptions. So I talked about this in my 2025 goals, that I wanted to start monetizing the newsletter in some way, with the idea that in the much longer run, maybe it becomes an income stream that's reliable enough that I can lower my clinical vet hours. That's more like probably a 5 to 10 year goal, to be honest, but got to start somewhere, right? So last year I turned on Buy Me a Coffee, and thank you very much to everybody who bought me a coffee. I need to go back through the stats, but I think I had about £60 worth of maybe £55 worth of donations, which is amazing. And actually, I used the money to buy my seeds for last year. So that was a really nice way of using that money to kind of go into something creative that I could then write about in the newsletter and sort of so the cycle continues kind of thing. So yeah, I'm going to look at the stats for that and maybe publish them in the show notes for this podcast. But this year I think I'm ready to turn on actual paid subscriptions. But my main fear is not being able to keep up with it. So obviously last year I kind of dropped off the newsletter for about 4 or 5 months while we were getting the house renovated. And we still have more renovation stuff planned for this year, albeit hopefully slightly less disruptive. So yeah, my plan is to turn on paid subscriptions when I get to 1,000 subscribers. And I'm about 160, 150 subscribers off that. So hopefully that won't take too long to achieve. And then after that, between now and then, I should say, what I'd quite like to do is bank enough content so that I have a backlog to fall back on. So obviously I'll still be writing regularly and, in a contemporaneous fashion. But if I had a backlog of sort of evergreen content, so the kind of content that's not got any kind of time relevancy to it, so it's not talking about Christmas, or it's not talking about something specific linked to a time of year, then I can publish it at any point. And then it means if I do go through a busy period, I've got a backlog of content to fall back on. So that basically what I don't want to do is have people subscribe and pay money and then, just getting some ASMR of a Labrador on the ice now. What I don't want to do is have people pay to subscribe and then feel disappointed if they don't get the quality of content that they were hoping for, or the frequency of content that they were hoping for. So if I have a little bank of content to fall back on, hopefully that will alleviate that sort of anxiety for me. So what I'm doing between now and when I plan to turn on paid subscribers is banking that content, basically writing those articles so that I've got them in drafts, and then I can sort of hit publish whenever it's appropriate. And then that way, hopefully, paid subscribers will get that regular, reliable, paid newsletter, and they'll feel like they're getting good value for money. So that is the plan. I'm also thinking, so I was looking back at my content schedule for last year when I was doing it regularly, and I was just thinking I set myself way too high a task. So I was posting for free once a week on a Sunday, a newsletter, and a podcast weekly on a Wednesday. And then my plan was for paid subscribers to get twice as much, so a second newsletter and a second podcast. And I just realistically, I'm like, I don't know how I would have planned to have kept up with that, because that is a lot. And I'm not sure anyone would want to hear from me that frequently either. And obviously this isn't my full-time job, so I don't know if I'm creating enough in terms of like my craft projects, my garden projects, my DIY projects. I don't know if I'm creating enough on an average week to be able to sustain that kind of content delivery. So my thought was instead to do one weekly written free newsletter, which will most likely be in the format of notes from the week, so a sort of summary of what I'm getting up to that week. And then one additional newsletter for paid subscribers, which would generally be a deep dive into some project that I'm doing. So maybe a knitting project that I finished, or a DIY thing, or something I'm doing in the garden. The ones I've got banked at the moment are things like my craft room plans. So I'm planning on decorating and furnishing my craft room this year. And that's the kind of content that I would probably share with paid subscribers. So I do one additional newsletter, written newsletter a week, and one paid subscriber podcast a month is what I'm thinking. Because I think once a month to record a podcast and edit it feels manageable. Weekly feels like a lot of work, and something that ultimately then the quality might suffer or the frequency might suffer. So that's my thoughts at the moment. I would love to hear your thoughts if that's something you'd be interested in. When I do eventually open up, slippy slidey here. When I do eventually open up paid subscribers, I'll obviously give everybody plenty warning, and I'll be doing it at the most basic. I think the minimum Substack allows you is $5 a month, so I'd probably just start at that, to be honest, and just see how popular or not it is, get feedback from people on what posts they like, and then kind of go from there. But yeah, as ever, I would love to hear your thoughts. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of cracking ice ASMR. Just let me hold this up to my feet as I walk across this icy grass. I hope wherever you are, you're enjoying your week, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.